I was a happy little child. Few understood my macabre interest, but they knew that I would never hurt a fly. My parents were too busy to ever really care about my habits. Even my nanny neglected to notice my evening strolls in the forest, alone. I was the odd one out. Everyone kept their distance. I often overheard my father describe me as born with raven hair and soulless eyes. Behind closed doors, of course. You see, everyone in my family was blonde. My mother, father, brother, and sister. Everyone but me. And I liked my hair the way it was, but they, on the few occasions they acknowledged my existence, made me cut it neat and short. I liked it long and wild, but they said, the governor's son cannot be seen that way. Son. Yeah. Just because I was 7 didn't mean I was ignorant of the fact that I was adopted. My birth parents didn't want me, and neither did they. My brother and sister had every piece of jewelry and every new suit in the state, while I just sufficed in my school uniform. They would never have said it out loud. It would have made them look bad. But they treated me differently. I wasn't there because they wanted another child. I was there because my father needed to be elected governor. And what do you know? 3 months after my adoption, he was elected, and he even got a second term. One day, when the media rolled around, my father put me next to him on stage to say, I'm a good guy, I adopted. But I knew different. The flashing cameras and the wave of journalists shouting questions at my father said, Look at the governor. He's a good guy. He adopted. But I knew different. The media often fails to see the truth. And as my father put his hand on my shoulder, and I stared into the mass of flashing lights, something clicked. I'm a pawn, I whispered out loud, my eyes widening, twofold, but no one noticed. I looked over to him with disdain and silently shouted, I'm a pawn. No, that would never do. I am not some pawn to be used, then discarded. I am not some show pony to be paraded around in front of the media. I am not a toy. Not long after this revelation, I concocted a marvelous plan. It was a Friday. The servants were out and my siblings at school. I got home hours before them. It was truly perfect timing. I watched from the living room as my mother entered and exited the kitchen at regular intervals, pretending to care about the family. As soon as she stepped out of the kitchen for the 9th time, I made my way in. And there before me was a gleaming kitchen knife. I took it off the counter and stood behind the door, counting. 4, 3, 2, 1. I made hers quick. She had no specific disdain for me. It only took a moment. She flinched, she screamed. It was almost poetic. Quick jab to the head and she was gone. The best part was her neat, aristocratic look was demolished in that fatal blow. Red liquid dripping under her white blouse, her legs limply falling under her pale blue skirt, and that Heidi Lamar hair ruffled with knife and blood. She fell backwards and soon created a pool of that crimson liquid that I happily walked through. I was such an amateur at the time, it was hell to clean up. I pulled the knife from her skull. I wasn't done yet. I needed to destroy the one that I hated most. Oh, Daddy, dearest, I chuckled as I crept up the stairs. He couldn't hear me. He didn't even hear his own wife's cries for help. He kept himself locked away in that bomb shelter of an office, and he was on business calls at this time of day. He was pretending to care about people. I crept to his door. Luckily, it was slightly ajar, and I slithered in without his notice, which wasn't anything new. I slowly approached the back of his chair. Silence for a moment, and then he hung up the phone. With the click of the phone being put down, I darted and put the knife to his neck. Still new to the rush of adrenaline, I didn't have anything witty to say yet, so I slit his throat. He tried to stop the bleeding, the gushing of blood from his neck, gasping for air, crying even in his last moments. I walked in front of him so that he would know who killed him. So the last thing that he would see was my smiling face, so that he would remember. If, of course, there is an afterlife, he would never forget. His head hit his desk with a thud, and I knew he was gone. The room was almost painted red. It looked like someone put a paint wheel in the middle of the room, but forgot all the other colors. In his struggle, he had thrown the contents of his desk across the room. Papers lay crumbled, dotting the room, the telephone now disconnected from the wall lay in his lap. I thought to myself, this is magnificent, but what is it missing? I am an artist after all. So I propped him up, folded his arms neatly over the telephone in his lap, and carved a grin into his face. He didn't grin much in life. Why not in death? He looked better that way anyways. I would have taken a photograph if it weren't time for my siblings to arrive home from school. It wouldn't take them long to find them, but I only needed a moment. Bam, the door shut. They were here. As always, Brother headed for the kitchen and sister to a room upstairs. Brother saw Mother almost immediately and made a dash for the door, which I had already jammed. Brother was smart enough to run and hide. At least he could prolong his life for a few moments. But sister was always like a deer in headlights. In fear, she would stand completely still, so I knew where she was and what she was doing. I took care in hitting the steps with as much force as I could muster. I wanted her to know that I was coming. I saw her standing in the doorway to the office, almost frozen in fear. Her little mind couldn't comprehend my art, but I knew that one more push would send her off the edge. I silently crept up behind her and in the deepest voice I could produce at that age, said simply, "Run." And she did, for her life in fact. The funny thing is, I never moved. I just stood there in the doorway and listened. Every time her footsteps ceased, I stamped my foot on the ground and she would flee. Ironically, from nothing. The upstairs of her house made a loop and she would eventually end up at the stairs again. When I heard her footsteps draw near, I receded into a shadow. Just before her foot touched the first step, I uttered one little word. Boo. Crash, bang, crack go her bones. It was a symphony. Her body contorted and wound around the post of the guardrail. She coughed and gurgled blood, attempting to whimper. It was her fault. I never understood why women wore dresses. They're only an inconvenience. What chance of survival did she really have? I carefully stepped over her corpse, as not to disturb the now silent symphony, before I took record. And last, but not least, was Brother, possibly the only person that I despised more than Father. He tortured me whenever I was unlucky enough to be in his presence. Unwanted, adopted, unloved, unimportant, unneeded, weak. All things that he would call me constantly. I wanted to kill him. Slowly. I was almost certain of where he was hiding. The only semi-protected place in the house was the safety cupboard. Father had it installed in case of communist bombing. It locked from the inside. I kicked and scratched and stabbed to no avail. Then I tapped the cupboard door with my foot. Creak. I crouched down just outside the entrance. Thomas, are you Then he noticed the knife in my hand. You son of a... How did you... Where's Melody? Melody. Ha. My grin grew sharply at those words, and as he backed into the corner I pounced. Quickly the blade pierced his heart and pinned him to the wall. He twitched and writhed in pain, almost like a dance, but nothing like poetry, or art, or a symphony. This dance was incredibly dull compared to them. Did you know that a human can stay alive for almost 3 minutes after their heart stops beating? I chuckled. I'm gonna have fun with your body, I said, sitting next to him. He choked, trying to curse me one last time. But his eyes began flickering in and out of consciousness before he could finish. I grabbed his face, snapping him back into consciousness for a moment, and made him look me in the eyes. Tell me again, John, who is weak? Who is unwanted? Who is unloved? I would have continued if I didn't see him slipping. Melody's dead. I took 4 pictures in all, 4 wonderful pictures to capture the poetry, art, symphony, and dance for eternity. But the pale black and white photos compared nothing to the real thing. I must do this again sometime, I decided, dragging the bodies to the attic, next time not so messy. I arranged them perfectly, each act brought together in complete harmony. There I took the 5th and final picture for this piece. Mother and father sitting neatly next to each other, and brother and sister hanging from the rafters above, permanently holding hands. Poetry and art, symphony and dance in perfect unison. I wonder what other combinations would look like. The police arrived 2 days later, wondering why no one in the family had been seen. I told them that they all walked into the woods together, but I stayed here because I was scared. They bought it. Police always believe the child. They did search the house, but police at the time weren't top-notch. I covered the door to the attic with white paint, a plank of wood, and caulk. I mean, anybody could have done it. The headlines the next day read, "Governor and family disappear into the forest. 7-year-old son saw it all." It was a media frenzy. Every journalist in the country wanted me to talk to them. But I was 7. They took me to the police station while they sent out search parties. They searched for 2 weeks before giving up due to no leads and weather conditions. A blizzard had hit New Hampshire hard. Perfect timing, I thought when I heard the news. After about a month, they found a foster home for me. A couple in their mid-20s who couldn't have children. I decided not to do away with them just yet. That would raise too much suspicion.